Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm so excited to introduce you to a brand new author, and you are going to love her book. Her name is Becky Moller, and she has an extraordinary tale to share with you, as well as extraordinary healing. Becky, please tell us, what's the title of your book and what's it all about?
The title of my book is UNDONE, UNAFRAID, Evolving Through Trauma, Betrayal, Femininity, and Faith. And it's about my own journey of the last 10 years, really, moving through all of the above.
Tell us about your personal journey. You don't have to give away the whole book, but tell us about the mighty message of the book.
Yeah. The book's mighty message is that healing is possible, and it's a very kind of intimate view of what that looks like internally, I would say. I think a lot of the experiences that I've had are experiences that so many people have. And so we hear about things like betrayal in a marriage or shifts or difficulties that we have in families, and we kind of see them from the outside, or it's like this story that happened over here. But we don't often have the opportunity to really witness what's happening internally for people when they're in that space. And I feel like that is kind of the unique vantage point of this book. I started writing it 10 years ago when I was really still in kind of that rock bottom. And as I devoted myself to my own healing, I have moved through so many stages and so many different levels of awareness. And so it's, I think, really interesting will be really interesting to people to be able to even see in the way I am writing or talking about the experience, how that perspective shifts, because you can kind of see, this is how I held it here, and these are the emotions that are coming through. These are the narratives I'm telling myself, the stories that I'm living through. And then as these tools kind of come through, how the narrative shifts, the way I'm talking to myself shifts, the way I'm thinking about things shifts. And it really kind of happened in real time with the manuscript because I've been in it for so long. So I think that that's kind of what's particularly powerful, because I think a lot of people talk about these types of healing principles in theory, or we read about them in theory, and it's like, that sounds great, but what does that actually look like in my and feel like in my day-to-day life and in my body and in my emotional reactions and responses? So I'm now a certified mindfulness and meditation teacher. I run a studio where I help people move through that every day. I teach embodiment classes, yoga, and group exercise classes as well. So it really is, I think there's a big mix of very practical, like this is what it looks like to build a life that is conducive to healing. And these are kind of the roller coasters that you can expect in how this kind of a journey unfolds, because it is a roller coaster.
Absolutely.
Healing isn't a linear trajectory. It's very up and down. And I feel like a lot of times when we theoretically are talking about healing, we want to grab onto this like ideal, like this is where I'm going. And then when the setback comes, it's like tempting to be like, I'm doing this wrong or I'm giving up. And I think seeing the lived experience will give people hope that it's like, I'm still on this path. This is what this journey looks like. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think what's intriguing about you too is by showing the journey, it's not about perfection.
Yes.
Because certain things still come up from time to time, but you have so many beautiful iterations along what I call the hero's journey or the heroine's journey, and what's beautiful is we get to see you traverse those and come out on the other side, and then see you traverse another step and come out on the other side. And so those different iterations of yourself speak to us, especially if we're in the throes of anything like that. So I love how you bring hope to the person who's somewhere along the journey, and they may be 90%, on the journey and they're just a few steps behind you. But even then, keep going.
Yes.
Keep going.
Yes, absolutely. Because I think when we're in this kind of a space, that transformation space, there are so many iterations of us. We kind of start to become different versions of ourselves, kind of more, it's accelerated than when we're in a different kind of space in our lives,
Absolutely.
The rock bottom space, it creates this kind of turbulence. And I think the other message I hope people will feel from my book and my work overall is I'm still in it. And that life, this is a lifetime practice. And this is welcome to the human condition, which I think is a very life-altering mind shift when we start to accept that this is what I'm doing here. It's not supposed to be perfect. I'm not supposed to reach this point of arrival and then pat myself on the back and put it on the shelf and admire it. I'm actually supposed to be here in this gritty growth. That's what life is supposed to be doing for me. So,
but you didn't start there.
No, I didn't start there.
Yeah.
No.
So let's talk a little bit about where you started.
Yeah.
What, because a lot of books, they'll traverse and then they go into dark night of the soul, and then you evolve from there. But yours was, this thing has happened.
Yeah.
Right? And you use such beautiful poetic language and expression. And so talk to us about where you found yourself and what the writing was doing for you.
Yes. My book opens in the moments after my husband disclosed an extramarital relationship, and in the very gritty, embodied moment of receiving that information. And for me, the way I had defined myself and my whole sense of self, my whole sense of identity, just shattered, and that's where we open our story. Is kind of this very shattering moment. The writing grabs the reader kind of right into whoa. And I didn't actually start writing this manuscript for probably 2 or 3 years after that moment. Because when you're at that first level of trauma, betrayal trauma, that's the terminology for it, you can't even complete a sentence usually,
And the last thing you're thinking about is writing a book.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Everything is fragmented and you're in that fight, flight, freeze moment. But as I was able to move through that, and by about 3 years in, get to a place where I knew there was value for me, I just felt absolutely compelled, I need to write this. When I started writing, I didn't know if it would ever like become something, like if it was going to be something I would share or publish, or if it was something just for me, or if it was something that was going to serve me, because I was very involved in 12-step. And along the way, I got more and more involved in addiction recovery. My husband, after disclosure, was almost immediately very open to self-confronting and taking ownership and working towards his own healing and trying to heal our relationship.
Which is incredible.
Which is
That
incredible.
does not always happen.
It does not always happen. So both of us became very immediately looking for resources and trying to fix the mess, okay? So I recognized as I started writing how the writing was making me so much more useful as a 12-step sponsor, and because it was helping me understand what the nuances emotionally and spiritually of what was happening in here, what had happened, and the steps I really had to take to get from here to, from where I started, like the puddle, the shattered puddle, to where I was feeling, like I'm moving through this, I have more stability. And for people in these types of situations, I would typically say, it's like 3 to 5 years typically to start feeling like you have some real ground underneath you again. And I feel like that timeline can be helpful, because I think people are like, so how long is this gonna take,
It's because it's a different sort of grieving, right?
It's a different sort of grieving.
If you've lost a husband or lost a partner in a different situation, you would expect that there would be a grieving period.
Yes.
But for some reason, with a situation like this, it's like, I'm supposed to get over this somehow, either this way or this way, but...
Yes, get over it is often like kind of the message you're getting. And it for me, it was like, I don't know how to get over it. Like, there was just so much pain that was just still there. Yeah. So really, this journey is about piecing apart every little micro step spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually that I kind of had to understand in myself and kind of gain some skills around to be able to move through it. And my work facilitated that, because eventually, I got more and more involved in 12-step, and then the foundation I was doing work with asked me to be on their board and then help run women's retreats, and then they asked me to be executive director, and then I was writing a recovery manual for them. And at the same time, I'm a fitness instructor and so I'm also recognizing and experiencing how trauma and my body are totally connected, and that my body is a tool to process this trauma. And then my 12-step sponsor is a yoga and meditation teacher. So then I'm introduced to yoga and meditation, and it all felt so synergistic.
I was gonna say, and step by step as well.
Yes.
Like you're brought to these different levels.
Very like line upon line, it felt so guided. I mean, the journey for me has felt so guided to the exact people and tools to create a really clear understanding of what healing is inside of us, and the kind of circumstances gave me the opportunity to really become a very deep dive student of that. And I could see in myself, and as I worked with the foundation and my people one-on-one, that there was something really valuable that I had gained that could be very helpful to others who are in that position, who, you know, they didn't have to have everything line up the way I had, because I could give them the gifts of that.
Right.
Yeah.
The tools and the tangible steps and the
Yes.
things like that. You mentioned something really intriguing to me, and that was, you know, the stories that you were telling yourself in the beginning.
Yes.
You know, who you were, and like an identity crisis of sorts, because everything that you thought you were and your purpose and reason for being, and then everything seems shattered. Can you speak to the stories that we tell ourselves in traumatic situations, and what did you discover along the way?
I learned so much about the stories that I was, first of all, I learned so much that I was telling myself stories all the time, that my mind was this incessant chatter in my head that was actually something separate from me. So Eckhart Tolle was a huge influence in me, okay? Huge influence in that awakening and and my work now as well. But that was the first shift, is first becoming aware that that voice in my head was there, and that voice is not who I am, that I am something so much more vast and spacious, and starting to separate myself. And I feel like trauma is this perfect invitation. It doesn't feel like that, but it is this perfect boot camp to experience that awakening, because that voice in trauma gets so loud. And I would say when I was in that rock bottom place, and when people typically are in that rock bottom place, that voice is coming from this limbic part of our brain that is screaming, you're not safe, you have to survive, you have to do whatever it takes. It might not say it in those words, but it's just constantly, its job, that part of us, its job is to help us survive. So we feel dysregulated, we feel really threatened, we feel out of control. So that first level of dysregulation is really embodied and so gut level and automatic. And then as we kind of pull out of that a little, typically that voice is going to be self-protective in a different way. It's less immediate and embodied, like a freak out or panic attack kind of feeling. And it's going to turn more into creating like either some kind of victim narrative. And that victim narrative can look different ways. It can look like it's all this person's fault. Can you believe how awful? Or it can be like, it's all my fault. I'm the worst person that ever lived, blah, blah.
And there's a reason, and then
yes, yeah. And it just builds and builds. Mm-hmm. But that those voices are coming from this small self, this small, Eckhart Tolle would call it the ego, right?
Right.
That small self that's trying to self-protect and trying to keep us safe. Mm-hmm. That narrative, all of those narratives, becoming aware of that is one of the most powerful things I think any one of us will ever do in our lives, is make that separation. Mm-hmm. Because that voice is there not just in those shattering moments, but it's there throughout all of our lives. It can be there when we think we're doing really well. It's recognizing that there's a voice coming from this smaller, more fear-driven survival part of me, more fear, motivated part of me. And how does that feel different than when I'm connected to the present moment? I'm just here and I can feel the spaciousness of who I am in that bigger way. Mm-hmm. And so really, my book is in so many ways a journey of really being fully identified as that small, fearful, shattered self to, through this journey, becoming something that feels so spacious and has the capacity to be with whatever comes from that deeper place of intuitive knowing and wisdom, and is still on the journey and hasn't arrived, but definitely.
But more empowered
Absolutely,
on the journey.
yes, and fundamentally moving through the world in a different way. And kind of how the incredibly positive fruits in every way that come from taking that, what really is an internal spiritual journey, for yourself, regardless of the outcome, regardless of how the relationship turns out, or how the crisis resolves, that kind of expansive journey inside yourself is the real victory. Yeah.
I can see that. It's interesting when you're talking, when a person goes on a hero's journey and they're thrust into it.
Yeah.
Their life is in danger, or their lifestyle or life as they know it or a loved one is in danger. And, there's these points of no return, but there is this ability to come back with a beautiful elixir of life.
Yes.
And I hear from your words, like, you've allowed this to sculpt you. You've allowed it to make you a more empowered, better person, a better teacher, a better leader, a better 12-step facilitator, a better, yoga instructor. And I love what you said about your body being an instrument. Can you tell us about, like, the moment that you realized that?
Yeah. I think the moment I really started recognizing the connection between my body and my state of consciousness, or my ability to move through life, like that my body was actually a spiritual instrument. One was, as I was really in the thick of trauma, where it was like I could hardly get out of bed in the morning, I could hardly function throughout the day, but I had to go teach my classes at the university. It was like at 5 p.m., I have to be on stage, like smiling and jumping and kicking and punching, and I could notice very clearly how my state of consciousness before that, teaching that class, was like completely different than my state of consciousness leaving that class. Like my mindset before going to class, I was so low. I was weeping all the time. I'd go to the grocery store and I'd be weeping. It was just like so like puddle, wallow kind of energy. I couldn't pull myself out of that, that depressive state. And I could go to class, and by the end of class, it was like I was okay. Nothing had changed outside of me, but I was okay. And I felt like I had the ability to go home, do what I needed to do, be there for my kids. Like I had this reservoir of just capacity to be with my situation after class. And then, so I was experiencing that, but I don't think it was until I started really practicing yoga and meditation and finding Eckhart Tolle and these types of resources and information that helped me understand what was actually happening. And that getting in my body, one, was allowing me to kind of release all this emotion that was stuck in me, but also just bringing me into the present moment, whereas all morning, I'm in my head, I'm in my mind, I'm in these thought patterns that are thinking about the past, thinking about what might happen in the future, and just kind of a slave to this. But being in my body brought me here. It brought me to just I just am. I'm just in this moment. And there was a freedom that just came from that, from not thinking, right? And it would put me in a completely different state of consciousness. So all those tools and information kind of in the way they happened really opened to me, like, what is really happening in here and what's creating the space for that deeper sense of self, that deeper self to have some room, you know?
Nice. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. Because it's, I think we sometimes can compartmentalize. You know, here's mind, here's body, here's spirit.
Yes.
And I love when you're kind of, you know, this whole centering and alignment and
Yes.
other things of recognizing the capacity to access all of that.
Yes.
And to get off the hamster wheel while you're, I mean, there's a reason we do this. Right?
Yes. Yes.
To going crazy. And, you know, even when you're doing this, it's like, feels like,
Yeah.
so you were able to do that inside and then begin to take that into your outer world.
Yes. Yes. And realize too that it wasn't some magical thing to, like, it's not like I need an hour to be at yoga to be able to find this. I started realizing, like, the presence is what's creating that space. And I can do that in one conscious breath. I can do that in 30 seconds. I can do that in my car as I hold the steering wheel and just take a breath and feel the sun on my face. And so life started becoming like, you know, 100 times a day. Can I wake up out of the trance and realize I'm lost again and come back to just this moment? Come back to feel my feet, come back to feel my hands, come back to notice my breath. Ah, there you are. Okay, I'm right here.
I remember you.
I remember you, and I'm here, I'm right here.
And you know, your words, it's the awareness.
Yes.
And suddenly you could wake up and be aware 300 times a day or 1,000 times a day.
Yes.
Instead of that sleeping or running away
Yes.
through your thoughts and your stories. So your story started to evolve, and I just love that. How did because in the beginning you were writing to write, to express, to figure things out, and then not knowing, is there going to be any benefit to this to anyone else? What was the main thing you discovered about you? What did you find about you that maybe you didn't know before, or the old stories didn't jive with?
Yeah. I feel emotion at that question, because I think as I hear you ask that, I feel like the main, most important thing I learned about myself is that who I am and my journey, like this internal journey, matters. And it matters whether or not anyone else ever reads this. Because I am this little beam of life force, intelligence, on a journey of discovering and uncovering who and what I really am. And that has nothing to do with how my marriage turns out, what my job does, whether this ever becomes a book or how successful that book becomes. It has nothing to do with any of that. That this unfolding and this awakening is all that really matters. And because I could feel that so deeply in myself as I took the time to really understand what was happening and what had happened, I feel that so deeply for you and you and you, like, and have this, it just created such a desire to help. It's like you want to stand on the rooftop and be like, everybody needs to know this. Like, this is possible for you. This is possible for you to feel that kind of like love for yourself and for this life and this experience we're all engaged in, no matter how it turns out on the outside. Yeah.
And it's so interesting because in our society, we're so goal-directed,
Yes.
right? We're so, once I reach certain pinnacles, and you were talking about the pinnacles, right? But, you know, have this goal, do this thing economically, in your career, with your children, da, da, da. And the beauty of what I'm hearing from you and what I've had the privilege to see in your words is this, this presence of beingness, not all the busy doing and the goal alignment, but like the gift in this moment, which is amazing because you've seen addiction on the other side of that, where it's busy, 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 busy in whatever in order to run away or escape or to do whatever, but this gift of real, true presence. Yeah, I want to buy 50 copies of your book and give it to all my dearest family and friends because of just how extraordinary. So Eckhart Tolle was a gift for you. Are there any other authors that you were like along your journey you're like, oh?
Absolutely. I'm like so many. Thich Nhat Hanh, a beautiful Buddhist monk. Pema Chodron, and I'm never sure if I'm saying her name correctly, but I love her as well. Michael Singer, The Untethered Soul, is another just really impactful. Sarah Blondin, Richard Rohr, and I love these. It was like so expansive for me to and 12-step literature too, just 12-step literature across the board. So impactful for me. But I love that they're from all these different traditions and religious perspectives, but I feel like they're all pointing to the same thing, which is that presence that you just talked about. This one thing it's in there. It's always here. Yeah, we just crowd it out, you know.
Doesn't she make you want to take her courses? I love it. I love it. So tell us, what do you want the reader to know about themselves by the time they are finished with the book? Like, what are promises that you can make for them on this journey?
Yes. Promises I can make to my readers are that if you are willing to engage, like with that open heart, and I will say it's not like an easy read, but there are breadcrumbs through the whole narrative that you could take as deep as you wanted to go, that are these little nuggets of like, how do I go deeper in my healing? How do I go deeper in my ability to love myself, to connect with the people in my life that are important to me, that I want better connection with? There are so many both practical tools and just kind of ways of holding things that are just littered throughout the whole narrative. How do I use meditation as a tool to kind of find that place in myself? How do I live practically with mindfulness and not like, well, if I was a monk and I lived in a forest, you know, it's like, how do I do this in actual real life, you know? So it's filled with that kind of understanding. And then the other promise I want to say that I make is that if you have experienced betrayal or a feeling of that safe identity or foundation just shattering, and that can happen in so many ways, not just in a marriage, in lots of ways, that you will, I think, feel a lot of validation for like the emotions you've experienced and the ways you might respond that are messy, because going through these types of experience is messy. And I don't shy away from that. I feel like, you know, this has been a journey to even be able to bring it forward, because it's pretty self-exposing.
It is, very.
I don't pretend to be perfect in any way. I really feel like it's really important to me to show like the gritty reality of how kind of our ego reactions show up, and we swing over here and then we swing over here because that is what we do. That's what we do as humans. That's what we do. And I know that I'm no different than you. So there's not like a shame or a need to hide. It's more like an invitation to this shared humanity and the beauty that's underneath all of that small coping. I think that's the hope and the trust that I would want my readers to leave this book with, that this trust that despite all of your imperfections, the ways you maybe haven't handled things perfectly, your big emotions, the places you feel, that there is something within you that you can trust perfectly. And that is a practice, accessing that and letting that be more forward in your life is something you can learn to access, that you can trust yourself, the deep part of yourself, not your small ego voice in your head, but that deep, expansive part of yourself. You can trust that implicitly. And I want them to leave with that feeling of, I know that I have within me everything I need to get through what I'm facing right now. You'll be able to find my book in hardcover, softcover, ebook, and Audible. And you can also find me at beckymoller.com. I have several online courses and I do webinars. I really feel so passionately that I am just here to help those who are in need of the tools that I have to offer. So I hope if you feel any desire for more support that you'll reach out to find me, because I truly want to hear from you.